Everybody, welcome back into Monday Fresh edition of the Concrete Jungle, a New York baseball podcast. I am Paul Russo, coming to you guys live from FingerLakes1.com studios, third floor, North Park building. Across from me today, once again, is Kyle Evans. Kyle, how'd your weekend go? I know a big, exciting weekend for you. Overall, in the grand scheme of things, congratulations on your move.
Thank you. Yeah, it went pretty well. It was pretty smooth. Actually happened pretty quickly, but yeah, overall, I'm pretty excited for it.
That's awesome. Anyway, Nate Sharman, our usual producer, again, out today. Should be back Thursday, so Nate, hope you're doing well. Getting a little bit healthier as the day goes on and days go on. So the exciting part, I suppose, really about baseball early season is you don't know what type of headlines you really get. Could be any plethora of any given thing, and unfortunately for the Yankees, it's not been ideal. For the Mets, it's been pretty good so far. And then locally speaking, a little bit of the same thing. For Rochester, certainly a lot of positives. And for Syracuse, not a ton of positives either going on there. I know we'll talk more about it, I guess, a little bit as we move into some portions of different things. But you mentioned off air, Kyle, we discussed things a little bit, right? The Syracuse Mets are off to a potential historic start for all the wrong reasons. Through the 11 games, they're 1-10 so far. I'll go ahead and get this stat out of the way. They haven't won in over a week, since April 9th, so well over a week. So it's been an interesting case so far for them, I'd say.
Yeah, I don't think it really could start much worse than that. I mean, they're actually even lucky to have one win.
Right.
Because if it wasn't for a Scranton error like a week ago, they probably wouldn't have a win yet.
True. Yeah, you're probably looking at about 0-11.
Yep.
It really was a fun weekend of baseball in the grand scheme of things. Not just Yankees and Mets or Red Wings and SMets, but
Jackie Robinson Day.
Yeah, Jackie Robinson Day on Friday, which obviously I'm always happy to recognize them. I think there's a lot of, and of course this is definitely a discussion for a different podcast, but certainly. He's being used for a lot of marketing tools now at this point by the MLB, and I think the history of Jackie Robinson certainly has become diluted in a sense. But like I said, that's a different podcast for a different day probably overall. So, let's jump in. Well, I think I was on the fence about how I really wanted to start the podcast today. Do I want to go negative? Do I want to go positive? I think we're gonna go ahead and start on the positives, Kyle, actually.
I like it.
So we're gonna start the Mets, take the series against the Diamondbacks. Obviously, the Diamondbacks, maybe not the greatest team this year, but that being said, certainly have some names on that team to keep an eye on. Obviously, like a guy like Ketel Marte,
Seth Beer,
yes. Dalton Varsho, who one of the top prospects in the game a couple years ago, I don't think has panned out quite as they had hoped, but you never know. Young career, and he came up. Obviously, he might be one of the lost prospects because of the COVID-shortened year and stuff like that. Either way, but the Mets now officially 7-3, first place still in the NL East through the weekend. Start with Friday, Mets taking a 10-3 victory on Jackie Robinson Day. Mets opening day, home opening day for them. Chris Bassett taking the win, Zach Davies taking the loss for Arizona. And really, this was pretty much the coming out party for Lindor and Starling Marte for the year. Lindor 2 for 3, 2 home runs, 3 RBIs, and a stolen base. Marte had a home run, 3 RBIs, 3 runs, and a stolen base for there. So, obviously I've said in this podcast, I really do feel like Marte is, from a sense of what you want out of a center fielder for their abilities and in raw whatever, he's, in my mind, the best pure center fielder in the game. They haven't been using him as a center fielder every now and then, which is interesting. But look, when his bat gets going, he's about as good of a hitter you can have in the big leagues. He really is. To quote my days from being back at college in Erie in Western Pennsylvania, it's a Marte Parte. So when he was with Pittsburgh, obviously, and it's cool seeing him, in my mind, in a big market now, because he really was a bit of a cult player in a way coming into the year. Obviously with Pittsburgh, then to Miami and Oakland. Obviously not the biggest markets in the world. If anything, Pittsburgh was probably the biggest market out of all of them in a weird sense. But that's just a very big baseball-savvy community. And now comes to the Mets. I feel like this is a very – he had a welcome-out party this weekend in Queens. And look, to the bigger side of media, and maybe this is how he gets more recognized throughout the nation as a whole, athletically speaking. This is what you can expect from him on night in, night out basis for the most part.
Yeah, he's got way more eyes on him right now in New York, and I mean the home opener went really well, and he showed to the fans that I think he's gonna have a good year.
Mm-hmm. So. Obviously, I know we talked a little bit off air about this. Lindor, like I mentioned, he especially on Friday had a good game, 2 for 3, 2 home runs. The key part of maybe that infield to a degree, I don't think he's the main cog, but obviously shortstop, premium position as a whole in the big leagues. We know what Lindor can do with his glove and obviously with his bat, and good to see him kind of get going a little bit. Obviously, too, one of the quote unquote good guys in the MLB. For the most part, depends who you ask in Cleveland, but I don't think there was much he could have really done there in the long run to make it any better or less worse, I suppose. We'll talk on this a little bit when we get to the preview part of the Mets, but I do want to bring it up here, obviously, for his performance within the game. But Chris Bassett, this was a guy that the Yankees did target as well, coming off about as horrific an injury as you can have as a pitcher with a comebacker to the head last year. Probably the worst outside of maybe blowing out your arm as a pitcher, right?
Yep.
So we know what he can do. Was probably Oakland's ace last year, and now certainly making the case that maybe not the ace in New York, just given what you have with Scherzer and DeGrom when he's healthy, but talk about rotation of aces, and he certainly adds to that equation. Went 6 innings, only gave up 2 hits and an earned run, but 6 strikeouts. Again, just a really great performance by Chris Bassett, who now sits on the year with just a .75 ERA at the moment.
Yeah, he's actually pitched very well, and without DeGrom, you kind of wondered, how would that Mets pitching staff be, even though they have Scherzer. And, I think it's been pretty solid.
Mm-hmm.
They're 7-3. They continue to pitch well, and I think they're heading in a really good direction.
So Saturday was the only loss the Mets did have on the weekend. Lost 3-2. Sean Poppin for the Diamondbacks picked up the win. This was a bullpen decision game for that. Former Yankee Julius Rodriguez took the loss for the Mets. And then Mark Melancon picks up his first save on the year for the Diamondbacks. Always like mentioning a former Yankee legend when we can. Top performers still nonetheless. I really did, again, Marte had a home run on Saturday and 2 RBIs. Pretty much he generated the offense in that sense, but Jeff McNeil did go 2 for 3, pretty much from the leadoff spot there. Cookie Carrasco, no decision, 5-inning pitch. Only gave up 3 hits and had 8 strikeouts. So obviously, again, the starting pitching for the Mets really just kind of showing what they can do.
And he was also kind of a question mark coming into the year. You didn't really know what you were going to get from him. And early on, he's looked really solid.
Yeah, this was a guy that in Cleveland we knew what we had out of him. Unfortunately, he did have the cancer scare and got healthy and beat cancer. And since then has slowly built himself back up. This is a guy who... It's weird because I don't think we necessarily ever thought of him in Cleveland as the workhorse type to get you, 7 innings and give up 3 runs or anything like that. But so far, the first couple starts here of the season, he has shown kind of, I guess, the old ways of him where it's, he goes to 7 innings but gives up none. Now, mind you, he only went 5 innings this time around. Mm-hmm. That being said, I mean, this was about as good of a line as a pitcher as you could get, in my opinion.
Yeah, and pitch counts are really still a factor early on in April. So, I mean, maybe as we get deeper into the season, he can maybe go a little longer. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he's looked pretty good.
All right, and then yesterday, Sunday, Mets take, obviously, the rubber match and take the series 5-0 over Arizona. Former Yankee legend Chasen Shreve picks up the win for the Mets. Gets his first one of the year. Loss goes to Noe Ramirez. Again, I mentioned this Thursday, and you talked about, Kyle, about how David Peterson, who came up, got rocked as a starter last year. Is now finding his footing, though, in this bullpen / I think they really end up using him as this flex starter role. It's kind of what he fell into on Sunday. Goes 4 1/3, gave up 3 hits, had 4 strikeouts, but that's what you kind of needed out of him for that. Obviously, we discussed Sunday how it was going to be a little bit of a question mark what the Mets were going to do on Sunday, where they were going to kind of fit in to the rotation of it. And he kind of steps up, does the flex deal. This was supposed to be Ty Walker's spot in the rotation. Does the job, and look, he kept the Diamondbacks at bay, and obviously the whole pitching staff did the whole day. Other than that, Pete Alonso had a homer and 2 RBIs. Eduardo Escobar 2 for 3, a double, a walk, and a run. So, look, the Mets offense all weekend had different guys stepping up when they needed to at different points for the most part. Mm-hmm. And look, we've been banging the drum on this since podcast number 1, opening day. This Mets team is probably going to be the better of the 2 teams in the city of New York. And, moving forward through last week, we talked about how, if anything, their bullpen is their spot. But this was, a very good series all around for the Mets. And if, like I said, obviously the bullpen's probably going to be where they need to step up a little bit, probably go out and get some outside help for that. But look, their bullpen kept the Diamondbacks at bay all weekend. And look, I understand the Diamondbacks aren't a good team or not as good as, the Mets or anything like that. But that being said, this is a very good shot in the arm confidence-wise, in my mind, for that bullpen. Because, look, I mean, I think you look at, the big leagues, they might kind of laugh at a guy like Chasen Shreve, who has had, in my mind, a very good under-the-radar career in the big leagues. Doesn't overpower you. He's, not to say he's a soft-throwing lefty, but he's a crafty lefty.
Like Nestor Cortez.
Right. I was going to say
in different roles.
I was going to say in the bullpen scenario, maybe more for Oliver Perez.
Yep.
But who, by the way, is still kicking with Arizona. I don't know if the grand scheme of people knew that. I mean, former Met and Yankee, Oliver Perez. But yeah, I mean, this is about, like I said, I mean, this has been about as solid a 10-game start as you could have at a big league level, in my opinion.
Yep. Their fans should be pretty happy with the start, and so should the players.
Mm-hmm. So, looking, I guess, also at some other stuff here for the Mets. So it's interesting because I think we're going to end up kind of forgetting about this kind of going forward with this team. And this isn't a knock on, say, Luis Rojas or anybody from the old staff. I think I do think they caught a lot of unnecessary flack overall, especially given that they were pretty much shoehorned in last minute, given the Astro scandal with Beltran. I mean, Beltran was the name, the manager going into 2020. And they opted to go a different direction, obviously post-Astro scandal and news. But it's just so, you can tell early on just the culture change that Buck has brought in. And look, there are still some guys from the old regime within that team and on that bench. But that being said, it's a different bench, right? Overall, I mean, look at, for instance, the hitting coach in Eric Chavez, former big leaguer, former all-star big leaguer, very good player, was going to go with the Yankees, but changed his mind and goes to the Mets. And look, I think this Mets offense kind of look, I mean, they treaded water last year, to be honest. And now look at the hot starts that they've had. I mean, Pete Alonso looks like pretty much rookie year Pete Alonso at this point. And, I think it's going to get lost, I think, within this year for the most part, the culture change and how much of a difference early on, at least, Buck Showalter and his staff are doing and showing within this team.
Yeah, I think Showalter was a very good hire for the Mets, and they're off to a really good start. And I honestly think they're going to keep up the winning. I think they're going to be a playoff team. I'm not sure how far they can get, but if the pitching continues, to perform like they are, I think they could make a run.
Yeah, and it's big because look, I when they're in sync like they were this weekend, in my mind, they really are the best team in baseball. I mean, hands down. And it's interesting because they also had Brandon Nimmo, who has been the best outfielder in the game so far this year, out this weekend with COVID. They were minus a couple different guys because of it, and they were no worse the wear for it. I mean, they just weren't.
You just didn't even notice, really.
I think Dom Smith was also out with it,
yep, or
because of close contact. So, look, I mean, they're going to be good. I think it's.
I know some will say
it's weird how it ebbs and flows in New York. It really is. Not too often, and obviously the Mets' history is very short in the grand scheme of things compared to the Yankees. But when the Mets have been good, the Yankees tend to not be good, and vice versa. Very, very rarely is there the overlap of where they're both good. I mean, you had the late 90s where they were both good. You had the little bit of like the mid-2000s where they both were good, but never, I guess, really the true title contenders. But really outside of that, I mean, it's usually completely opposite storylines for the most part.
Yeah, and some will say that, it's early on in the season. I mean, it is. But really, you can just see the direction they're headed in, and I really do believe the Mets will be a playoff team.
Yeah. Oh, hands down. I think it's, early on it's their division. I think, I might have said Phillies just to win on my other podcasts that I discuss things on, but look, it's tough to go against them right now. I mean, It's just aren't. Let's take a look at what the Mets have on deck. They open a 4-game set at Citi Field tonight with the Giants. This is about as good a pitching matchup across 4 games that you can get, period. So all the games are on SNY. Get that out of the way first and foremost. So tonight at 7:10, Alex Cobb, he's 1-0 on the year, 3.60 ERA for the Giants against Taylor Megill, 2-0. Clean ERA, 0.00 ERA for Megill. Certainly probably the very nicest of surprises so far for the Mets, in my opinion. Got the opening day start. Certainly not who you'd expect to be the opening day ace to go out there and get it going, but he got it going so far for the Mets so far. Tomorrow night, Tuesday, 7:10, Logan Webb, 1-0, 1.29 ERA against Max Scherzer, 2-0, 3.27 ERA. That's going to be a fun matchup. Logan Webb's been a very fun reclamation project for the Giants over the past couple of years. Obviously, we know what Scherzer can do.
Yep.
Wednesday, 7:10, Carlos Rodon for the Giants, 1-0, 1.50 ERA against Chris Bassett, 2-0, and 0.75 ERA. That's going to be a really fun matchup with pretty much 2 of the better younger pitchers in the league. That obviously, we mentioned Bassett, but Rodon gets kind of forgotten about in the shuffle here. I mean, he ended up having a really good first half of the year last year for the White Sox. Kind of cooled down at the second half of the year post All-Star break, but very good pitcher. Not to make this comp for Giants fans because I don't think they really want it, but he reminds me a lot of Barry Zito in essence. I think I might be kind of dating that for you a little bit there, Kyle, but I remember Barry Zito being the big towering ace for the A's, goes to the Giants. Things didn't exactly pan out the way they were supposed to, but still end up having a very fantastic career in the Bay. Obviously, I think you hope Rodon's a little bit better than that, but nonetheless. And then Thursday, 1:10 getaway day game. Anthony DeScalfani, 0-0 on the year, 4.32 ERA against Cookie Carrasco. Also 0-0, but .84 ERA.
Yeah, you're right. This is going to be a very good pitching matchups, and I don't know. Could there be a split? I think so. I think there might be a split.
All right. So, obviously, with that going on, because the Giants are probably either the second or the toughest team they've faced so far.
Yeah.
Phillies, I think it's a toss-up, I guess. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned this is going to be. I think it's either going to be a split or a 3-1 series win for the Mets, though. I think tonight's matchup is going to be.
I got the Mets tonight.
Yeah, I'd like to think so, but at some point, Miguel's gonna give up a run. Unfortunately, I don't know. Either way, all right. Let's go. Let's jump on over to the Yankees. They blew the series in Baltimore, just to put it bluntly. That being said, let's touch on that Thursday game, though. They did have one final one against Toronto.
Severino.
Yeah, 3-0 win. Severino picking up the win. Kevin Gausman picking up the loss. And then Michael King got the save. So
first career save, by the way.
Yes. Yeah. So interesting stuff kind of happening behind the scenes in the bullpen, I'd say, for the Yankees.
And he's been very good.
Yeah. Yeah, King's been a nice prospect to kind of see come up over the past now year and a half. We'll touch on this as we kind of get to the Baltimore stuff as well. Obviously, Severino went 5 innings, 2 hits, 6 strikeouts. Connor Falaifa, 3 for 3, double and 2 runs scored. Then Jose Trevino, 2 for 3 and 2 RBIs on Thursday. So excellent job by a couple of guys obviously brought over in the offseason. Trevino, certainly the backup catcher role, but I think he's trying to make a case to be the starter at this point.
Yeah.
And certainly understandable. The offense, he's certainly swinging a better stick than Higgy right now. I think Higgy obviously is a tick better defensively than Trevino, but I mean he's making his case to be the primary catcher.
I got a feeling Higashioka is going to lose some playing time here soon. I mean, again, yesterday he just looks lost.
Right. So, and then moving on to Friday, now we get into the Baltimore series. Yankees drop Friday night 2-1. Win for Baltimore going to Joey Crabal. And then loss going to Clark Schmidt.
In 11 innings.
Yeah, that was a tough loss. That was a tough one to swallow. Jordan Montgomery looked really good nonetheless. I know we obviously were worried about him coming out after taking the comebacker off the knee on last Sunday. No decision, 5 innings pitched, 3 hits and 2 strikeouts. So looked very good nonetheless. Pretty typical Montgomery stat line with that. Obviously building up the strength for him kind of moving forward.
And he didn't deserve a no decision.
Right.
But the offense has been brutal. So.
Right. So, and this is where we go, though, at this point. So Stanton 3 for 5 with an RBI, but the two other at-bats with 2 strikeouts for him. I could care less, I guess, about that. I mean, his bats showed up when it needed to show up, and they just couldn't do anything really with it for the most part. And then Higashioka 1 for 3 with the double.
His third hit.
Yeah, this is going to be a bit of a theme here throughout this series, kind of moving forward with it. Saturday, the only win on the series for the Yankees, 5-2. J.P. Sears picks up the win. Travis Laskin Sr. picks up the loss for Baltimore. And then, again, first career save, this time for Clay Holmes.
And first career win for J.P. Sears.
Yeah, and then gets optioned. But something, again, we'll touch on with that. Sunday, 5-0 victory yesterday for Baltimore. Jorge Lopez picking up the win. Jonathan Loizaga picks up the loss. Probably left in a little bit too longer than he should have been. Yeah. Your top performers with that, obviously we mentioned Nestor Cortez already off the jump a little bit. No decision, 5 innings pitched, 3 hits, 12 strikeouts, and an immaculate inning. DJ LeMahieu went 2 for 3 with a walk. And that's pretty much it for the Yankees in that one. In the series, and here we can really jump on in, the Yankees were held scoreless. They were shut out in 26 of a possible 29 innings played. So, there's a lot to digest here. I want to talk and give justifiably some time to Nestor Cortez. About as good of a game as you could ever ask for a guy in a career game for him. This is a guy who's been a bit of a cult hero for us Yankee fans. 12 12 strikeouts, immaculate inning. I don't think that's something that we ever expected from Nestor Cortez.
No. When I heard that it was an immaculate inning, I was like, I had to go back to make sure they were right. I didn't realize how efficient he was in that fourth inning. I mean, he was just literally, you could just tell out there that he was just feeling it. He just kept throwing it and hitting the zone and hitting the zone. It was actually very fun to watch. But at the same point, I just knew how bad the Yankees offense was. And I just felt bad for him because, that good of a game, you want to get a win. And, I mean, he didn't get a win. And the bullpen ended up giving up 5 runs in the 8th.
Yeah, so not the best. It's tough. I mean, it's tough when your offense just does not show up and do what it needs to do.
And it puts more pressure on the pitching staff, even
Right.
the bullpen, because they know that 1 or 2 mistakes and they're probably done for with
Right.
how bad the offense is.
So now let's move into the offense. So we'll start with J.P. Sears, and so he gets the win, and he has a really good day out of the bullpen. Gets optioned to Scranton, and they call up Tim LeCastro to get the start in left field for Joey Gallo yesterday. Gallo, one of the players who just is not playing well right now. And I know there was discussion around, well, why would they do this? Well, clearly they're trying, more or less, I think, to light fires under people. That being said, I'm not a big fan of the move they did with J.P. Sears. To me, from knowing from the coaching side of things and the playing side of things, that can just kill momentum.
Mm-hmm.
And confidence, more importantly, for a guy like J.P. Sears. That being said, I do understand the thought in it, the thought process behind it. The Yankees do have guys at AAA, whether it is LeCastro, obviously, who has big league time. I mean, very good big league player. And then you also have guys like, we mentioned last week about Ryan Lamari. He's down there as well.
And people keep mentioning Miguel Andujar, but
he can't because he's not an outfielder.
Yeah, and he doesn't provide speed like
Right.
LeCastro does.
Yeah. So I think my main problem goes back to the timing of it. And this is where I think people kind of really started yesterday with the Aaron Boone, discussion. And and look, this is something that I've been saying. I can't put all of this on Boone. Boone is more or less just the yes man at this point for Cashman and Hal and the front office. So I wasn't a big fan of the move. I understood the thought process behind it. I'm not a big fan of it.
Yeah, and people don't understand. Just because Aaron Boone has the manager title next to his name does not mean that every decision that is made is just made by him. He asks, opinions from so many different people, or different people tell him, different stuff on what he should do with the lineups, resting guys. But people just think because he's the manager that the decisions are all on him. He doesn't just make the decisions by himself. And that's what people just fail to understand. Like, yeah, he writes out the lineup, and yeah, he probably gives his thoughts on the lineup, but he's also got other people giving their opinions and stuff on it. And I just don't think people ever understand that. So I just wanted to, clear that up a little bit.
Yeah, and I do agree with this point as well. I think this part's a fair criticism as well here. And again, this part goes back to I don't think this is as much on Boone as people think. Having 3 different lineups come out against Baltimore is borderline inexcusable to me.
Yep. And sitting Aaron Judge Friday night.
Yeah, and then sitting Rizzo yesterday, off day today. There's a lot of question marks at this point surrounding this team. Obviously, we mentioned start of the year, pretty much a team at a crossroads. How much of this core will remain and how much won't?
You just don't see other teams do what the Yankees do. Like, you don't just hear all these different star players getting rested every 6 days, every 8 days. It's just they play a lot of games. But Yankees, it's a whole different story.
And this is something you mentioned off air, but we should bring it to light to a degree. This was a weekend where the AL East as a whole struggled, and this was the Yankees' prime chance to take advantage of that, and they just did not.
And I actually feel like they always get off to a slow start in April. Even when in 2019, if I remember right, they got off to a slow start in April. It's just like they never get off to a good start.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's tough to swallow. It's, this is a team that, the blocks have been there since 2017, and they just have not done anything with it. And it's tough. I was pro Boone. I thought Boone would be a very good managerial hire, and I thought for the first couple of years he was. And now it's just pretty clear how the system is operating in place.
I also don't
I said, not to interrupt, I did
good.
say, to some people preseason, like, why would Boone come back? I'm like, you don't understand. Boone's going to be there until Cashman's the one that gets canned, because that's Cashman's guy.
And it seems like that isn't
and it's not going to happen because Cashman and Hale are tight.
Yep.
This is, my brother jokingly said yesterday, George's got to be rolling over in the grave. Sure, but really the one rolling over the grave is probably Hank. Hank, who was the closer version of George, who was the one, and really before he died, in the last one in 2017, really hammering out and wanting to make the moves to get back to winning a championship. We're entering the second longest title drought in Yankee history at this point.
But why are people so surprised? Like, everyone complained about how bad the offseason was, but then when the season starts, they changed their mind and thought that they were actually going to be really good. Like,
I think a lot of it has to do with the way, say, social media content kind of works. I think a lot of it is, so we traded away Gary, and that was one of the big sticking points for a lot of fans, and so they saw it as, all right, well, now we can move on and be better, when Gary was just a piece of that. No matter how big or small it is, it's just a piece. It's just a piece to the bigger issue at hand. And that's why when you have some of these teams that, you look at them, like Houston, for example, is the perfect example of they kind of just retool and readapt no matter who guys losing or guys going wherever, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you lose Correa, so now you bring in a younger guy like Siri, or I forget the name of the guy who's now playing the middle infield as well for him, who's started off the year pretty good. That Kyle Tucker ends up being good, so that, puts Miles Straw as the guy and the odd man out. But you can look at Houston. They just adapt and retool and stuff like that. Boston's kind of the same way in a way. I mean, they're in the process still of kind of retooling the pitching still, but, they kind of regenerate the offense a little bit. Obviously, they add Trevor Story, and, they kind of adapt and move on. I mean, the Yankees are still running. I don't have a problem with running with the core. The core for any sport, for any team, is a big component of it, right? But that being said, you need the pieces around them, the ones that you take away or add in, to be cohesive enough and be good enough to do it. And simply put, this has not been the case.
And if you go and ask Brian Cashman, he'll say, oh, this is a World Series team, and we spent a lot of money. Well, of course he's going to say that. He's the general manager.
Yeah.
What is he going to say? This team sucks?
Right.
Like, no.
And he's put on the facade again of being close to Hal, so he becomes pretty much the puppet of what Hal wants him to say. And look, it's pretty well known that most of these owners at this point, they really just don't really care so much about the product on the field anymore. I mean, the joke is Baltimore is just a money laundering scheme disguised as a baseball team, and we lost to that this weekend. So that's tough. It's tough, no matter which way, I guess, to put it.
And then they were shut out, too, for the first time against Baltimore since 2016.
Yeah.
Like, that just says right there how bad of a weekend it was to cap off the weekend.
Three runs across 3 games total, not good. Or 6 runs, rather. I apologize. But, I mean, like I said, you shut out in 26 of 29 possible innings. Yep. And look, you're not going to score every inning. I get that. I don't have a problem with that. I understand that.
But it's the Orioles pitching staff.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's a pitching staff that is pretty much in a trial and error type basis with them trying to figure out which prospects at this point are good and which ones aren't.
I mean, they do have a couple, really solid relievers, but nothing where they should be getting shut out this many innings with that lineup, no less.
They struggle. They struggle against Jordan Lyles of all people. So, Speaking of games, they're off today, travel day. Now they're got 3 games starting tomorrow in Detroit. If there's any positive, it's pretty much the top end of the rotation for the Yankees. But they'll be facing pretty much the top-ish end for Detroit, in essence. So tomorrow, all the games are on yes this week for these games anyway, so get that out of the way. Tomorrow, 6:40. Garrett Cole, 0-0, still looking for the first win or loss on the year, I suppose, for that matter. 5.59 ERA against Tyler Anderson. Still looking for his first decision on the year. 5.06 ERA. Alexander's been a nice little interesting start to the year for Detroit. Supposed to be kind of your innings eater. And he's thrown pretty good overall. So that'll be an interesting game there. Detroit has been an interesting team overall, to be fair. So this is going to be a pretty interesting series in my mind.
Yeah, they did just lose Javier Baez out of the injured list, so that'll hurt a little bit.
Wednesday, 6:40, Severino 1-0, 2.25 ERA against a guy that the Yankees know pretty well, Eduardo Rodriguez. He's 0-1 on the year, 5.87 ERA. Obviously, Rodriguez pitching for the Red Sox his whole career and then signed with Detroit in the offseason. So, slightly familiar face. Maybe that'll help out a little bit. Who knows? And then Thursday, day game, getaway day, 1:10 on yes. Jordan Montgomery will be on the bump, and he will be taking on, to be announced, my favorite pitcher of all time. So, Detroit, not sure where they're going yet with Thursday. Survey would say probably Screwball if he's good to go. Who knows? So, yeah, I mean, this is going to be an interesting series against Detroit. Not too sure what to kind of make of it at this point. I think this is a good series for Garrett Cole to kind of get back on track. Yeah, I mean, Detroit's a decent team. I mean, this is a team that people kind of pinpoint as possibly a dark horse this year. Look, their offense is really good overall still. Obviously, Cabrera's had a nice little start to the year for him.
5 away from 3,000,
yep.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so the Yankees could allow that to happen. We might witness history on yes. Plus, look, Spencer Torkelson's kind of coming on pretty good. And they got, obviously, you mentioned Baez, he's out, but they still have Akil Baddoo and good young players like that who are making a difference still.
The thing is, when this 6-game road trip started against the Orioles and Tigers, as a Yankee fan or as a player, I mean, you would expect to at least take 4 of 6. But I mean, the way it's going, like you might end up with 3-3.
Yeah, I was thinking this is probably going to be for sure a split in my mind. No. I don't know whether or not that actually happens, but I'm thinking a split one way or another. So, all right, before we get out of here, we need to discuss our farm squads, Rochester and Syracuse, certainly becoming a tale of two teams for sure here. Rochester post Sunday, moving into the off day today, 7-5, tied for third in the International League East. They split the series with Buffalo 3-3 over the course of the last week. The offense as a whole looked really good. I mean, they had a couple booming wins, if you will, 11-10 on Saturday, but 8-1 yesterday. That offense is looking pretty good overall, all things considered. I mean, you have Luis Garcia, team leader in average at 377 right now. That's also 6th in the International League. And Nick Banks is 10th in the International League in average. So, they're looking really good. Jake Knowles looked really good again. And then Josh Palacios came on midway through the week through an acquisition that the Nationals were able to get him. Quite literally has been on fire to start his Rochester campaign, and that is a bit of a pun. His uncle played in Rochester back in the day, and actually still lives in Rochester as a city firefighter. Fun fact. So the Red Wings are looking pretty good. Their pitching has been a little bit hit and miss, but that bullpen has been a very big bright spot for them overall. They had another really good outing yesterday. Sanchez only gave up a run, and then the bullpen pretty much came in and shut the door. Carl Edwards Jr.'s looked really good.
Clippards looked pretty good for the most part, but he did get rocked the other day.
And their closer, who I forget to name off the top of my head, Hernandez, I believe, he's looked really good as well. So, I mean, the Red Wings are trending in the right direction, I'd say.
They're in a way better position than the Syracuse
Yeah.
Mets.
So, Rochester this week, obviously all minor leagues, again, as we mentioned, off days on Mondays to do the week-long series. They're in Lehigh Valley all week. That is the AAA affiliate for the Philadelphia Phillies. Some notable names you'll see there. Mark Apel, former top first overall draft pick who never signed with the Astros. He's been on the comeback tour with the Phillies, so he's there. One-time Auburn Doubleday, Aaron Barrett, signed a minor league deal with the Phillies as he continues his comeback from 2 arm blowouts. It certainly would be a fantastic story to see him back in the big leagues, but he's still rehabbing, and he's now with the Phillies organization, so he's there. Cam Bedrosian, Joe Gatto, who I always like mentioning just because of the name coincidence, and Rodney Torreyes is with Lehigh Valley to start the year. So this is a pretty decent Lehigh Valley team. I know they're sitting slightly below 500 right now at 5-6, but I would not sleep on them at the slightest. They do have a little bit of a potent offense. I know Rowan Quinn's still there on offense. They have a couple guys too that do have some big league experience and kind of have been stashed away on the 40-man by the Phillies. So. It will be a nice prove-it series, if you will, for the Red Wings. I'd imagine it kind of be like the Buffalo series. I'd see a 3-3 split possibly out of this.
Yeah, because Buffalo's pretty good too.
Yeah.
So.
But either way, like I said, this Rochester team compared to the past few years has been a nice breath of fresh air for the folks going to Frontier Field, I'd say.
Yeah, for sure.
And then Syracuse Mets. They're 1-10. They're in the basement, 10th in the International League East. Swept in Columbus. They, like I mentioned, haven't won since Saturday, April 9th. If there's any bright spots, it's got to be Mike Montgomery, team leading 3.00 ERA. Carlos Rincon is leading the team officially now at an average of 2.63. That's not good.
Yeah.
It's pretty apparent where the shortfalls of this team are probably going to lie. Obviously, we kind of thought maybe pitching, but pitching can only be sometimes as good as what you got going on offense. The
offense did look a little better. They did lose a slugfest.
And that's what I was always saying. Polka has 7 RBIs, and then towards the end of that Columbus series, Blankenhorn and Khalili kind of got going a little bit.
I think it was Saturday. They gave up 15 runs. You can't win a game even with
no. And that's the thing. Their pitching, I think, does have some bright spots, like I said, and if anything, I do think the offense is going to be where they struggle now, more or less. But yeah, you give up 15 runs, that's a no-go. And then this week, it does not get any easier. They are back home starting tomorrow at NBT Bank Stadium against the Worcester Red Sox, who are 9-3 on the young season, leading the International League East.
So good chance they could fall to 1-16.
I would imagine that they would get one. I would hope they get one at some point. Baseball is that way, but I can't see a way that they win the series. Worcester's got a lot of good names on that roster. Darwinaz Hernandez, former big leaguer Derek Holland. Josh Taylor's down there on rehab. This is where now we'll start seeing these names kind of pop up on rehab assignments, which is always an interesting thing at AAA and fun to see. Jeter Downs, Jarren Duran, 2 of the main Red Sox prospects are officially at Worcester this year, so it'll be interesting there. And then, as I call them, journeyman guys, Frankie Cordero, Rob Refsnyder, former Yankee, and then Christian Stewart as well. So this is a Woosock lineup that and pitching staff that's pretty good for being a AAA roster, all things considered. Your main promo nights at Syracuse this year: Bark in the Park tomorrow, Buck Night on Thursday, where they're also honoring Donnie Baseball, Don Johnston, who they will be naming the press box after in a ceremony Thursday night as well. And then Saturday is Mystery Bobblehead Day. First 1,000 fans going to Mystery Bobblehead. So obviously, if the weather kind of cooperates a little bit better, I know the forecast the whole week is not tremendous, but you never know. But yeah, the Syracuse teams, it's rough. I'd imagine, like I said, I'd like to imagine they get a win in this series, but I don't see them taking the series by any means.
Yeah, it's rough, but you could still go out to the ballpark and have a good time.
Right.
It's baseball still, but if you're a Syracuse Mets fan, yeah, it's pretty rough.
Yeah. All right, so that pretty much does it here for Concrete Jungle today. We will be live again Thursday at 11 a.m. for our pretty much the weekend preview, as we kind of call it at this point. If you guys aren't able to catch us live here on YouTube, you can always check us out after on YouTube and also Spotify and Anchor. You can listen there. And then, as always, for Kyle Evans and everybody at Finger Lakes One, I'm Paul Russo. We will see you, Thursday. See you then. Take care, everybody.